Yo, what up, everybody? It's your boy Carson Fox with another edition of Fox on West Virginia Mountaineer Sports, talking some football tonight. And I am so excited and thankful because CJ Donaldson, my favorite player on West Virginia, is coming back. Country Roads Trust announcing earlier this week that it has partnered officially, and as they have done for the whole winter season, fall into winter season, with announcing these partnerships, essentially affirming to the fan base that these certain players from the football program will be back for 2024 because of this commitment to the trust. CJ Donaldson was the very last one on my indispensable list. So what an accomplishment for not only Neil Brown, but this football program, Country Roads Trust. What an amazing page that this program has turned in just a short while. I mean, it's kind of crazy when you think about it. The NIL only became legal in, July of 2021? So we're coming up on, just 2.5 years, and how this program was gutted, really gutted, going into the 2021 season. Didn't suffer that as bad, but still some big losses going into 2022. 2023, missing out on about three players potentially that could have maybe been potentially saved because of NIL, and we chronicled this. Caden Prather, Jordan Jefferson, Charles Woods being the three most notable, but how West Virginia was able to retain them so well. 2024, I don't have any issues. It's incredible. That in my indispensable list that I came up with, I think right there at the end of the regular season, in between the bowl, yes, exactly, preparing for the bowl game, when the crazy month of December with National Signing Day, the early signing day, with the transfer portal opening back up, looking ahead to a bowl game. We were closing the chapter on 2023 while opening the next chapter into 2024. I said this was pretty much the indispensable list, and Donaldson becoming the last one on this journey. Garrett Green, Nico Marchiol, Jaheim White, Cole Taylor, the entire offensive line, Traylon Ray, Rodney Gallagher, Sean Martin, Trey Lathan, Josiah Trotter, Ben Cutter, Aubrey Burks, Anthony Wilson. Wow. Wow, wow, wow. Mountaineer Nation, Country Roads Trust, stepping it up in support of these Mountaineers and Neil Brown, this entire football program, and doing a phenomenal job in retention, setting up for what could be the most look forward to year in 2024 since 2018 with Will Greer, my boy David Sills, Gary Jennings, and that awesome offense that West Virginia had with Dana Holgerson at the helm of the program. But I want to stick with Donaldson's commitment just to start out this program tonight. What I will say, thinking why so late, Carson, I think that, as much as, and I loved this story last year, and I really think this spoke to CJ Donaldson's character, but who knows? You never know these things without knowing these guys personally, but saying how much he appreciated how West Virginia found him, Travis Trickett, now out of the program, but Neil Brown also on a Florida recruiting trip, finding him at Gulliver Prep High School down in Florida, wanting to, giving him the leniency to change his position to play running back, leaving the tight end position that he played in high school, flourishing. Chad Scott really taking him under his wing, from 2022 into 23, not only teaching him the position, but teaching him different, techniques and way to protect his body to limit injuries and the pounding that he took in just 7 games played in 2022. I really do think that he, after that first year, being really the biggest name on the block, big man on campus, just as a true freshman, that CJ Donaldson felt wanted, felt really desired, felt loved, and last year made a significant NIL interest in CJ Donaldson. Now looking ahead to year 2 of him, and like, I'm not going to fault any of these things, but I just want to acknowledge the reality is when he took his helmet off in that pit game for the cameras, cost a personal foul, unsportsmanlike conduct penalty in the game. You just wondered even there, just me as the casual fan, is the collegiate fame for CJ Donaldson going a bit to his head? And in addition to that and this is what I think that fans were really dogging him during September, that I brutally defended him for, is he trying to mimic his game off Le'Veon Bell? If you watched him run, especially during those Texas Tech TCU games, there were times when he was waiting for the blocks to set up in like a zone scheme before he would find the perfect hole to hit to try and get that was exactly Le'Veon Bell's same running style in the NFL, and I think it can work. But it also, how you saw after that stretch of the season, he got it into his head, kind of admitted that these were his faults, listening to Coach Scott on how to potentially change his game, and boom, you look at the next couple of games against Oklahoma State and Central Florida, and he went over 100 yards and looked to be himself again. It was unfortunate that he separated his shoulder, torn labrum from that hit by, I think it was Danny Stutzman or someone else on the defensive line from Oklahoma on that goal line stand in that Oklahoma game, tears his labrum. But what a warrior to complete that game, play through Cincinnati hurt with just 5 carries, play through Baylor hurt with just 5 carries, and then get surgery. So what I think it is, and I don't fault the man, to get back to my original point with CJ, is the position of running back is a grind. It is a battle. It wears you down. You are the boulder that crushes. If you watch like old war movies, even from like older shows like Last Kingdom, something on Netflix that comes to my mind, is like when bodies meet bodies in a pile, or Game of Thrones, and you just crush them together. That is CJ Donaldson as your running back. He is your Warhammer. He is your Grond from Lord of the Rings, breaking down the walls of Minas Tirith. That is what he does for this program so well. So with that, the risk for injury and just a long sustaining career is probably the most high risk position on the field. I feel like it's like linebacker, running back, because they meet in the hole and they crush. So if he wanted to wait out the transfer portal season to potentially, I don't know, you always got to claim tampering in this world of college football, that somebody's talking to somebody to present you with the best offers. And if he thought that he could potentially make more money out on the open market, maybe that's why he didn't sign with Country Roads Trust through the, let's call it, early signing period from when the transfer portal opened to its close going into spring practice. Getting awesome health care, surgery, getting rehabbed, and let's be honest, he's a perfect fit for this offense. He's a perfect fit for this offense. Anybody out there would love to have CJ Donaldson in their backfield, and I think deep down he knows that. Even just some of the if you look at the comment section on my recap of the Oklahoma game, that's exactly what everybody from the Sooners who are tuning into my video were saying, that CJ Donaldson, the running back, absolutely love to have him. Now, only 171 attempts, which is lower than what I projected for him preseason. I thought he could get to that 200 or more mark. Playing 12 games is great, but you look at that yards per carry average at 4.7, so for a total of 798 rushing yards for the season. Yes, you love the 11 touchdowns, and that's phenomenal. He's an awesome short yardage back, but dropped 3.3 yards per carry in comparison to as a true freshman. But still, the touchdowns were there, and you saw, like I said, in certain flash moments where it was like, that's the CJ Donaldson of 2022. He had it all along. Whether or not he was battling an injury at the beginning or middle of the season with an ankle, I've listened to some other shows out there, I don't know, but I definitely think it was that one in that Oklahoma game. He got popped on the goal line. I know exactly the shoulder it was. I know the exact hit. Saw it on replay countless times. I know exactly that's when he did it. So if he wanted to field offers, more power to him. Glad to have him back. Not holding that any anyone against him, but that's the reality of the world of the situation. Is you have guys, 18 to 22-year-olds who are making business decisions all the time. So even though he's the last player back to return, absolutely happy to have him. And what I mean by him, like he is so perfect for this offense because I'm really struggling to find any sort of comparative player over the last 20 years to CJ Donaldson. At his size and speed combination, 6'2", 240, I don't know anyone like him. Now, I like Jaheim White. Don't get me wrong. I'm amazed by his speed. The way that he's able to hit the outside and on straightaway carries, it will be a phenomenal combination and triumvirate, honestly, with Garrett Green also, who's running the ball over 100, was one of the leading rushers at the quarterback position in all of college football this past year. It's going to be a great display once again with the left side of the offensive line going to be phenomenal. We'll still see what happens with, three guys who are all in their fifth and sixth years of playing college football, Brandon Yates, Jaquay Hubbard, Nick Malone, or maybe a Xavier Bosley challenges to start at that right tackle position. But the left side, and Wyatt Milam at left tackle and Tomas Remak at left guard, the left side's going to be the strong side, remember the Titans. So I like Jaheim White's game, phenomenal, incredibly impressive. It deserves all of the recognition that he got as a true freshman, but I think it's a great, I hate to use the cliche, thunder and lightning combination between the two, with Donaldson as your 1A and Jaheim White being your 1B. Because at Jaheim White's size, taking the kind of pounding that comes with a full game schedule, 11 Power 5 opponents in the Big 12, you saw come Baylor, come the bowl game, West Virginia was down to Jaheim White, who was taking a lot of carries, needed to be spelled after taking three carries in a row on one series against Baylor, and then they either bring in Jalen Anderson or to bring in Jalen Anderson. So with DJ Oliver transferring, I think you have to keep Anderson as your third back. You're going to see the number of carries split, I feel like, pretty evenly across the board with Green, with Donaldson, with Jaheim White. But I think that this is a goal I'm just putting already in early February for CJ Donaldson, is reaching that 200-yard mark. Playing a full, complete game series. Omarion Hampton from North Carolina, he took over 200 carries by himself. So if he wants to make it to the pros, and I know injuries are freak, the injury against TCU was a freak injury, and then what are you going to do? You tear your labrum in a metal on metal, iron sharpens iron moment in Oklahoma at the goal line. But I want him, I just want him to be able to play a full 12 games for a schedule for 2024, get over 200 carries, break the 1,000-yard rushing mark, and if he can get into double-digit touchdowns once again, he's going to garner looks for the NFL. He has the size. The size-speed combination is there, and that's what you have to have at the running back position in college football. Now, again, my argument and why he can be considered to have a sophomore slump, and it's like, why if you're a fan out there who already wants to move on to Jaheim White and was thought that Donaldson might be dispensable. My argument, I'll stay consistent with what I said after each game recap and totality of the season. Neil Brown's conservative play calling, Garrett Green's inexperience, injury that he suffered in the Pitt game, and was battling through by the TCU game, and then he wasn't a newbie anymore. CJ Donaldson. Opponents knew that you just had to stack the box, load the box, sell out against number 4, and you could stop West Virginia's offense because you weren't getting beat over the top by Garrett Green. So that's why I think he was held in check. In addition to, so those are my primary reasons. My second, sub-reasons being he was trying too hard to set up tackles, to set up blocks in front of him, like Le'Veon Bell, to find the perfect holes. And instead of trudging full speed, barrel through ahead to either make your own holes or just run people over. Instead of, picking up 4+, he would just pick up 2 or get dropped in the backfield. And once that flipped come Oklahoma State and then UCF, you saw the difference. So add in Jaheim White, and I think this is going to make for a deadly, deadly combination in 2024. Going to be very interesting to see how Chad Scott and Neil Brown divvy up those carries to keep him fresh, because you don't want to burn out CJ Donaldson into the second half of the season. But I know, as I said in my last video talking about the schedule, their first 8 games of the season are really going to determine how far West Virginia can go for 2024, because November lightens up. October's a gauntlet. September, including August 31st and behind, altogether is not that much easier. So check mark. Let's go through this one more time. What Neil Brown needs to do between now and next season, and let's just say Neil Brown and program by extension, but to put himself in the best position possible for 2024. And I'll just stick there with Neil Brown. So retain the indispensable list. Done. That's great. That's awesome. You've done it. Win the bowl game. Done. A lot of momentum for 2023. Replenish depth and upgrade in the transfer portal. They've done that at cornerback. I still think they need to do that at safety, given the losses that they had. On the interior defensive line, or just defensive line in general, I think there's some opportunity still potentially at defensive tackle, or you roll with what you have by adding TJ Jackson at the opposite side. And another thing that I said on this list was making a defensive philosophy schematic change with the bandit position. And that's exactly what they're doing by going to a more traditional 3-4 with 2 outside linebackers and 2 middle linebackers look. So that's going to be very cool to see how that's deployed, I think, first in the spring game. But we'll see how that plays out this upcoming year. Finding one last gem for the 2024 high school recruiting cycle. And they did that on signing day by getting Day Farmer, the 4-star wide receiver from Florida. Things to watch for: Zach Frazier and Beanie Bishop, or I'll include Doug Nestor. Listening to a lot of podcasts and a lot of scouts that were at the Shrine Bowl, the Senior Bowl over the course of the last week. And I think Doug Nestor at his size, 6'7", 320 or something like that, is a very intriguing prospect. I mean, Colton McKivitz is now starting for the San Francisco 49ers in this upcoming Super Bowl this weekend. So if Colton McKivitz can make it as a starting offensive lineman for one of the best teams in the NFL, I don't think Doug Nestor is that far behind, coming out from where he was as a right tackle, starting for 3 full seasons at West Virginia, playing a lot as a true freshman at Virginia Tech. Doug Nestor is really someone who I think went underrated throughout his entire WVU career here, and continued to get better. Pass protection, run blocking, as long, again, as he could avoid some injuries or getting rolled up on, I think he might be a day 3 pick. Very could be. Because everything on tape and all of the stats tell me Beanie Bishop has that caliber. But you see a picture of him at that Mayo Bowl leading up to it, and how much bigger Garrett Green looks next to him. It's like, whoa. Can he go up against a Justin Jefferson, a George Pickens, a Devontae Adams? We'll pause. I mean, I don't want to degrade the guy. Phenomenal, amazing 1 year here in Morgantown in the old gold and blue, but just translating to the next level, no idea. Couple of things else I want to talk about, and I'll try and close the show in between 30 and 40 minutes if I can. Couple of different podcasts that I have listened to in the last week, and this plays in part with what I want to talk about is the last point. That's the thing that I don't know, is the big question mark on my list for going into 2024, and what I think is the next level in the trust, in addition to winning games, but more important, getting the Jimmies and the Joes that West Virginia needs to compete to be a top 20 or top 25 definitely, but top 20 program in the new world of college football with the domination of the SEC and the Big Ten from a revenue perspective and the teams that they have, is leveling up in high school recruiting. And this kind of came to a head earlier this week when the guy I've been mentioning in a couple of my episodes, 4-star, 6'3", 220-pound outside linebacker from Amani Christian High School, not terribly far from me here in southwestern Pennsylvania, but Amani Christian being in the city of Pittsburgh, Deshaun Burnett choosing the Penn State Nittany Lions, had West Virginia in his top 5, had visited there a year ago, had been to multiple games apparently this past season, and chose the Nittany Lions. And this is following a stark trend in recruiting that I'm noticing, is that Penn State is dominating the state of Pennsylvania, but more specifically the WPIAL, which is southwestern Pennsylvania, right here where I live, unlike I've seen in my lifetime, and it's making me completely ill. I looked this up between their recruiting classes of last year, 2023, so this year 2024, and then next year 2025, and the names. I mean, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and now Burnett, 7 4-star players from the WPIAL specifically that have now either signed, committed to play for Penn State. And I know this is even worse, like making Pitt fans even sicker, because that's their stomping grounds, that's their backyard, that's what they've relied on for decades. But West Virginia was just as competitive, I feel like. Or even, as recent as, like, I can think of some of the guys that they pulled out. Drayvon Henry off the top of my mind. I know Quantel Raines didn't necessarily make it here, but was another 4-star guy out of Aliquippa. Quentin Martin had West Virginia on his short list, but ultimately choosing Penn State. It was a borderline 5-star running back from Bell Vernon, not very far, friends with Rodney Gallagher. Thank God for Rodney Gallagher being the one WPIAL guy that West Virginia can really tout to incoming recruits on visits to say, like, you can be here, because it just seems like that Penn State has a wall around the state of Pennsylvania, and they're capitalizing everyone from Scranton to Waynesburg to Philly to Erie. And it just hurts because we all know the challenges that West Virginia faces pulling in high-level 4-star or above in-state recruits, or even guys who are border into 3-star recruits, doing a great job with I feel like their walk-on program and pulling some high-caliber guys. The Clement brothers, Bryce Biggs was a guy who followed alongside Wyatt Milam. Those are ones who come, like Judah Price was the top player in the state of like one of the top performers, and comes on as a walk-on to wanting to play for the Mountaineers. So, like, they're doing great with that in-state recruiting. I think, and of course, getting big fish like Zach Frazier, Wyatt Milam has really changed the narrative since the Dana Holgerson era. But it's like, right here, I'm 40 minutes away. I'm closer to Morgantown than you are in Charleston, or you are even south West Virginia, all the way down to Bluefield, or even into the eastern panhandle. So it's like West Virginia not being able to have any of these wins in Pennsylvania, I'm just really struggling with understanding that. And I listened to a couple of podcasts recently, one earlier this week, and I think one a week or so ago. Two of the guys who are leading the charge in West Virginia's recruiting. Trey Nair, who's the director of recruiting, as he laid it out in this Country Roads webcast with Jed Dranning and Owen Schmidt and Wes Euler, talking about what he does for the high school recruiting perspective, and then listening on the flip side to Drew Fabianich, West Virginia's new general manager, scouting director. You get it. And I can't knock these guys at all for what they eat, sleep, breathe, live this. They live it. They live recruiting. And if you're a recruiting junkie like myself, you understand what it takes. It takes watching all kinds of film all hours of the day to try and identify talent. I mean, the way that Nair found a Zay Jennings out of this recruiting class, just reading the Cincinnati Enquirer and checking out on box scores of weekly high school teams in the Cincinnati area and seeing week in and week out this guy Zay Jennings, he talked about this, really, really shining for his high school program. And, identifying him there, all the funnels and levels it takes for these recruits to meet a baseline, level of as a player that West Virginia wants to pursue, being evaluated by multiple people, going up the chain, sending out offers, getting to visits into their high school, then obviously getting them on campus multiple times, all the communications that go into this. It is a 365-day-a-year routine, because you saw it was the overlap that comes right there in December. You're finishing one season while, 30% of your roster, in Neil Brown's words, are eyeing up ventures in the transfer portal. So you don't know where you're going with that. While at the same time, you're trying to find the perfect balance of scholarships for guys that you think are going to stick around for the next year, while weighing if they have COVID eligibility additionally, so if you want to retain them or not, or if you want to expend some guys who aren't necessarily panning out to the transfer portal, to then how many can you bring in from the transfer portal while balancing that same number of scholarships with high school. It's nuts. It's nuts. You have to eat, sleep, breathe, and Drew and Trey definitely get it, and they love it. One thing that I will be a little bit critical of, and I think I even commented on their tweet where I had the link to the post about the show, was there was a segment in there where I think Trey was trying to necessarily grapple at the right words to say, and it kind of came out a little bit muffled, and kind of to the extent of, if you are captivated, as I think a lot of fans are, by the stars, because stats have shown if you can load up on superior 5-star, 4-star talent, that is how you compete at the highest levels of college football. And I know that this world has changed very much so since 2021 with the invention of the transfer portal and what you can do with 1-year, 2-year fill-in guys. But still, I look at the rosters, and comparatively to, let's go back to Penn State, who I just was talking about, 45 4 or 5-star guys coming out of high school that are going to strap it up August 31st for Penn State, to 6 for West Virginia. That's what the disparity to me that doesn't make sense, and it just makes me wonder, what is West Virginia's recruiting strategy? And that is what Trey was alluded to, and you get this sense by the narrative that comes down from Neil Brown, saying that West Virginia is a developmental program. And I get it, that is. You will make or break years by guys like, Pat White that you find, who was a converted wide receiver, who turned down playing a wide receiver at LSU to play quarterback at West Virginia, or Owen Schmidt, who was a D3 star and translated perfectly to Division I, CJ Donaldson, who has the size, speed, and every combination to play running back, and you have to have those diamonds in the rough that turn into gems for a program like West Virginia, because you're not it's proven for decades that West Virginia recruiting at a top 20 level is, especially getting into the top 10 and top 5, like Penn State has been flirting with for these last couple of years, is they're not having those wins for a number of different reasons. And I don't have enough time in tonight's video to get into that. But it just felt like the strategy is to go all in on on those kinds of players, and to let the ship sail on all those guys that are in the rivals' top 250 and, let them fly. And that's where I just struggle with that attitude, because it's just but I do think that having a guy in place like Drew Fabianich, and this isn't a knock against Trey whatsoever, but who has that experience. I looked it up. Trey graduated a year younger than me in college, so he's right around 29, 30, and we think we've seen it all, we've done it all. But you have a guy like Drew has 35 years worth of experience between college and the NFL scouting level. So bringing him in, developing these scouting reports, using him for the transfer portal recruiting, hearing what he had to say, I just think is going to be a blessing for everyone within the department, especially these coaches. Because to ask them in today's world, with a general manager is exactly what this program needed. I know, give or take with the NIL, but even just from a roster management standpoint, prior to the transfer portal and NIL, looking at the different, looking just as I do, depth chart, years of worth of eligibility at each position, going in and out, and asking coaches to do all that all the time, while again focusing in on guys as young as 8th grade, trying to identify the next 8th grade 5-star, getting everything right with your fundraising and your boosters, building your coaching staff, retaining your coaching staff, and managing these players. Gen Z, let me tell you about them, trying to manage people like that and keeping them focused 12 months out of the year with the grind that is. The demands upon a college football coach are astronomical, and it's pushing guys out across many different sports in today's world who really just want to get to coaching football. As I was listening to Josh Pate from Late Kick saying about Boston College's coach leaving the game early and wanting to get into the NFL. Gary Partridge, Pitt's best coach on the defensive line, better than Narduzzi, deciding to leave Pitt and go to the NFL to coach. These guys who just want to coach ball, as the old-timers would call it, are leaving the game because the demands are so much greater in 2024 than 2020, 2014, 2004, 1994, you name it. It's you get the Jimmies and the Joes, and the X's and O's, to an extent, will take care of themselves. It comes down to coaching prowess, comes down to big games, conference championships, and the college football playoff. Otherwise, you're going to win 70% or more of your games if you out-recruit teams. Just ask James Franklin. Jamie Chadwell down at Liberty, formerly Coastal Carolina, can coach the pants off James Franklin. Knows offense, knows ball, but James Franklin is the greatest, raw, motivating. I don't know how that these kids love him the way, and Happy Valley the way that they do, but they do. I mean, the proof is in the pudding by what they're doing in high school recruiting and transfer recruiting, is they want to come play for Penn State. So that's what I want to see. I know it's February 8th. There's a long time till next December, when it's or who knows when the next the 2025 class signing day is. Do they move it back to February? Do they keep one in December? How does that go? But this adage, I feel like, of not giving up, that's not what I'm trying to say, but it's like using the summer camps almost as your scouting arena, in Morgantown, seeing that those kids kind of express interest, and just limiting yourself to that pool of players potentially for who you see going forward through the recruiting process. You got to expand that. I said in previous episodes, Lincoln Riley was in Ironton, Ohio, an Ohio-Kentucky border town just a few weeks ago, to look at Sean Terry, who is a highly coveted West Virginia recruit who's gaining offers by the boatload. Lincoln Riley in Southern California in somewhere in nowhere, Kentucky, Ohio. You got to, as West Virginia, let Neil Brown and this brand play nationally in some expanding markets that West Virginia did not do this well whenever they joined the Big 12, because Dana Holgerson didn't know what he was doing and or was just so lazy to recruit in these emerging markets like Texas, or some other of the schools in the Midwest states. So letting that West Virginia brand, with the success that was built in 2023, and if West Virginia has another good year in 2024, using Neil Brown and the other really committed, dedicated, hardworking staff members in this brand to expand to some of these emerging markets potentially, to gain interest, to build affinity, and to get some recruits out of places maybe West Virginia hasn't ever recruited before. I get it. Don Nehlen said it right, and it's totally understood that West Virginia is the state, all of its contiguous states, but any other regions that outside 6 to 8 hours, so you can get into some other Midwest, Northeastern, into the Carolina schools. Then recruiting the state of Florida, that are kind of the guys that are passed over by Florida State, Florida, Miami, and finding anybody else in the Southeast and trying to get some of those guys. But identifying some different talent elsewhere is where I would like to see this program go, and bring in more. I mean, like I was ready to say for my high school recruiting National Signing Day special that this was going to be, on paper, according to Rivals, the worst recruiting class that West Virginia had in a long time. It was a couple decades, but then they pulled Day Farmer, they pulled Trayvon Dunbar on signing day, and it flipped the narrative, and it moved West Virginia up the rankings. But still, 44th in the country in rankings. Gotta get higher. I think shooting higher. And again, there weren't a lot of needs necessarily that immediately needed to be filled by any sort of true freshman for this program. I said it then on National Signing Day, and I say it again for 2024. But still, high school recruiting has to be like how Johnny Majors did it back in the 70s, is loading up on as good a talent as possible as you can find with players that are interested, and then siphoning off like the way Penn State does. If guys can't cut it, you're overloaded at one position, letting them walk through the transfer portal. And West Virginia's got to start getting some of those big fish names like Deshaun Burnett, who passed on him on West Virginia earlier this week. Getting some playmakers at these positions, especially defensively, because as I've said before, I think West Virginia is an offensive school and will always be an offensive school for its history, is known for good offense. Defense, you ebb and flow. You ebb and flow through the decades, through the years. So getting a stud safety, getting some beef on the defensive line, getting some David Long-like linebackers, getting some awesome, Rasul Douglas, now Beanie Bishop, Adam Pac-Man Jones, corners. I know that's just 3, but I'm just saying, like, West Virginia's got to build up that depth defensively for the future. And I hope that as they will be afforded, that West Virginia will be afforded the patience now because of what Country Roads Trust can do in retention to let up-and-coming guys like a Corey McIntyre, let's say, who can marinate for a year with a red shirt, who can see some snaps here and there as true freshmen, and then afforded the ability to grow as a third-year, fourth-year, fifth-year player and not get poached by other teams, and then buy into the program that's seeing success, development, contending for conference championships, putting guys into the league, all of the things that I beat to death on this program. That's how you build a program that West Virginia can do that. That now it's from trusting the climb to make the ascension, and then having the kind of consistent success that great franchises and schools In baseball, for me, it's like the Atlanta Braves or the St. Louis Cardinals, always the standard. Or, the Yankees too, for an example. But it's like you have a great farm system, what you're doing with your high school recruiting, and then you bring them up, you develop them there, so then they stand out as pros, as when they're in their third, fourth year. And the only way to get them there is through this NIL type of retention that Country Roads Trust is exceeding and doing great with. So kudos to Stephen Ford. I think that he and his team at Country Roads Trust, alongside Ren Baker, are the most powerful people at West Virginia and just doing an amazing job in their partnership and collaboration, being unique and creative and working hand in glove in tandem. The new NIL shop that unveiled on WVUsports.com today, the amazing event that they did for the West Virginia baseball program a weekend ago, the partnerships with the beer sales, whiskey sales, all right, we got some things going now that Shane Lyons is out of the helm. Thank God he's gone. Okay, making waves. Basketball, different story. But football, it's like I have to be excited where West Virginia is at as a program from a standpoint right now. So still a lot to happen between now and August. We'll follow the storylines. I'll continue to bring that, my thoughts for you to share. What did you think about everything I had to say tonight? I kind of dabbled over a lot of different stuff, from recruiting, retention, CJ Donaldson specifically. Are you happy to have him back in Morgantown? Do you see him breaking 200 carries, 1,000 yards, over double-digit touchdowns in 2024, and, of course, staying healthy, most important? If you did, you liked all this, smash that like button. We'd like to have you as a subscriber as well, now over 200 going into the 2024 season. Leave your comments here on YouTube, or you can follow me on Twitter at Carson_Fox27. Appreciate it. Tell your friends, tell your family, tell your dog that I love doing this, and we'll bring it to you each and every week. Thanks, Mountaineer Nation. Let's go. We'll talk again soon. Oh, and just before I finish, I am working kind of on a series of videos, just to let you know. I'm really excited to bring to you in the very near future. Taking a look at kind of the comprehensive fan experience as a West Virginia fan on game day, on site, talking about tickets, talking about concessions, talking about things, outside of Milan Puskar Stadium, everything that we've done, and that West Virginia has done as a program, and how it's built up, and why 2024 could be this year that everything comes together and you should buy season tickets or a mini package or something like that. So I'm really excited to bring that to you very soon. Talk soon. Hail West Virginia.